Hello, legendary listeners, and welcome to the new episode of the Legendary Ladies podcast. This week, Morgan and I are here to talk about something that, let's be honest, Kat would not be a super fan of at all.
I
In any
can't
world, I
imagine.
don't think we could force her to watch this
We
show.
could, but I think that she'd be mad. At
So
least it's not fantasy.
it isn't fantasy.
Sort of. It's sort of not fantasy. I mean,
It's
it's
not
bordering.
fantasy.
It's bordering fantasy.
It's like realistic fantasy. It's not like elves. It's like,
It's
can you
real
actually
life.
afford those clothing? Yeah, real life fantasy.
Real life.
So
There's air
we're
quotes
here
around that.
We're here to discuss the pilot of Emily in Paris. So season 4 of Emily in Paris just came on Netflix. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's really excited about it. I have friends at work who are like, oh, Amy, you have not seen Emily in Paris? It's your kind of show. And I was like, okay. So we decided to watch the pilot, which is admittedly several years old.
Yes.
But we're going to talk about that and things we liked about the pilot, will we continue watching the show, the characters, the setting, the clothes. So Morgan, had you watched Emily in Paris at all before this? Like, had you had any experience with it?
I hadn't. My experience with Emily in Paris was like kind of like internet osmosis, where when it came out, everybody was like, how to say this kindly, like hate watching it. Everybody was like, this show isn't very good, and yet I keep watching it and I cannot stop watching it. And I was like, I think at the time I was like, oh no, I don't. Like the mental capacity to watch something like that is not with me right now. I will check that out later. And then I kind of just never checked it out. But everything I've heard about Emily Paris is like people love it, but they're also like, they'll be like, I love Emily in Paris. Oh my God, it's so good. And you're like, oh yeah, you really like it? They're like, well, I mean, not like really like it. Like there's always like like a star next to it where they're like, it's bad, but I'm obsessed with it.
It's like airport novels.
Yeah.
Like they're the kind of like the people who can turn out just books after book after book, and you're like, this
Yeah.
was pretty bad, but also I read it all the way through
It's
and didn't stop, and like
I-
literally
I-
read it after I got home too.
I was happy while I was reading it, but I knew it wasn't good. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was also not bad, and
No.
like it was a happily ever after. So that was kind of my like general take on even just this pilot. I was like, huh, okay. I was like, I feel like this was not a complicated anything. Nothing about this was unpredictable. The most unpredictable part of this, oh, by the way, spoiler alert for anyone who's listening who's not watched the pilot. We didn't watch beyond that, so it's just the pilot.
Yes.
The most unpredictable part of this script, in my opinion, was the fact that the boyfriend didn't dump her. I thought the boyfriend was gonna dump her. When she's like, I'm leaving for Paris for a year.
Exactly. And then he was like, okay, we'll make it work. I think I turned to my husband at that point and was like, let's start a timer on how long this relationship lasts. I was like, do you think that they make it through the pilot? And he was like, I think maybe the pilot, but definitely not the first season. And I was like, I think like barely, probably. I wouldn't be surprised if I turned on episode 2 and it was like, we're over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, episode 1 ended in a way that I did not expect. I was like, oh,
No.
we just changed tones.
Oh,
very
okay.
quickly. I'm so confused.
We're going in a different direction now. Yeah, I was also surprised with like it got like a little the tone got a little raunchy at the end of the first episode, and up until that point, everything was like, oh, oui, oui, mon ami. It's like a cupcake, a baguette, chocolate croissant. Like it's just like a sort of a dumb American wandering around Paris, like just getting herself into hijinks, and then at the end she just like takes down the power grid with her vibrator, and you're just wasn't expecting.
I wasn't expecting this at all. So the point where like I'm watching it on my lunch break at work, and fortunately I was a late shift where like no one else was in the office at the time, so I'm just watching it, and all of a sudden that comes on. I was like, oh. I actually belly laughed when she plugged it in and it sent the whole power grid down. I was like, that's actually hilarious.
It's so
I
good
didn't
too.
expect that to end the episode, but
It's
that's kind of hilarious.
it's also so funny because the difference in the voltage is like very real between the US and Europe. So every time I go to Europe, I always have to make sure I have those converters. Like I don't like want to short circuit like an appliance or short circuit like a, you know, a building. So the idea that she could have short circuited everything by using that was funny and felt actually kind of correct that probably not the whole like, you know, whole section of the city, but definitely the building or like her
Definitely the building.
apartment. Yeah.
I would argue that was the most realistic part. That and the
That's
fact
true.
that the French people were just so mean to her.
Just took an immediate
Like
dislike to her. Yeah, that felt real. That felt real.
the bakery gal where she's like trying to correct her French, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't decided yet if Emily is dumb or just really good at compartmentalizing. Like, I wonder if this girl is like, you know what? Everybody's being really mean to me. But that's okay, because I'm getting followers.
Because
Or is she actually dumb? I haven't figured it out yet.
I also haven't figured it out because she's got like a very like bubbly personality. Like, it's okay if you hate me. I'm just going to work a little harder. And they're like,
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, no. And also as somebody who works in social media, I can tell right away that this show is going to infuriate me in a way that like few
Yes!
other shows do. And I'm
I
excited
wanted
to
hear
dive in deeper into eventually
this
into
was
how implausible it gets because it was already pretty bad episode 1.
I was literally I was watching this and I was like, Morgan's gonna have thoughts about her
sure
literal actual like notes app that she pulled up. Strategies to improve marketing via social media.
I
She's
know,
like, oh my
but
God,
notice that there were
Instagram.
no strategies on there. It was just
No,
like
she just wrote a
strategies to
title.
improve. Do. And then my favorite is that she did this, and you're supposed to be like, man, look at Emily go. And then like later on in the episode, one of the French guys is like, you are working too hard. And I was like, is she?
Is she? She's just sitting in an office.
What is she doing exactly? I didn't see any of those brilliant strategies.
That's the only way that I knew about this show was
I
that
feel like
there's a girl on
uh-huh.
TikTok who makes parodies where
Oh, amazing.
her parody title is Every Episode of Emily in Paris, and she literally grabs like something out of the fridge, like a bag of cheese out of the fridge, and she's like, "Un de fromage," and takes a picture of it and like pretends to post it online. She's like, "Fromage et toi, get your girls together." Oh my God, it's famous now. And apparently that's how Emily in Paris goes. And I was like, so this is influencer world.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
basically what it is. Influencer Sex in the City.
It's it's crazy. I do feel like this show was kind of created in the lab to infuriate me specifically, because I worked at a French company for many years, and
know that.
yeah, did you know that? Um, and I work in social media, so I do feel like, you know, specifically I was like watching this pilot, and I know it's going to get worse from here on out on both of those cases, and I was just like, oh boy. Oh boy.
I do kind of like that they well, okay, so again, this is about as cookie cutter of a show as you could possibly imagine. She is the assistant who suddenly gets promoted, gets to go to Paris. And again, the only shocking thing is that the boyfriend didn't dump her. I was waiting for the boyfriend to be like, "Oh, you just decided to go to Paris and assumed I would be okay with that." But he was supportive and was like, FaceTime, let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
And then she gets there, and sure enough, the clients don't want to work with her.
No.
I
mean, it doesn't help that she doesn't
cubicle.
I know. It doesn't help that she doesn't know French. And also, presumably, her company did not tell them about the switch, which is, again, this whole show is implausible. But the amount of implausible to be like, this company is going to send her over to work with them, but also not let them know that they've switched out the people and the new person that they're sending doesn't speak French. And like, I hope that's okay. So that she just pops up and she's like, "Parlez-vous français?" I don't. Like, what? how did anyone think that was gonna go? I was dying.
It was so good. And I, sure, she gets there, she feels ostracized. It's one of those things where I'm like trying to pick out all the characters in the office. And I'm like, okay, so you're the bossy bitch, like boss lady who's probably eventually we're going to get you out of a sticky situation and then you're going to like us. And then
Yes.
you've got her boss who's probably going to find himself in some sort of like sexual harassment situation, get fired, and Emily's going to save the day by like by getting him out of the office and girl power. And then you've got the like younger guy who's real mean about it, but they're probably going to become besties. And then you've got Luke, the only character whose name I
Luke.
remember, Luke on the scooter.
Yes, Luke is the best.
Luke just comes by and he's like, okay, I didn't actually want to be that kind of mean. And I was like, I'm really surprised you're the guy doing this. And then you've got the weird girl who's like terrified of English, like actually allergic to English. And I think what's going to happen is that she's just going to get like she's going to fail so aggressively. She's going to get fired and then try to get Emily fired.
Oh,
So
there's
like,
gonna
I
be
feel like I
drama.
can write this whole script. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, me
and
too.
yet I was also mildly entertained.
And
I
yet
don't know what it
I was
is.
ready to press play on episode
Me too.
2. I was like, "Oh, no, Morgan, you're gonna confuse yourself about what happened in 1 and what happened in 2. You can't do it yet." But yeah, no, there's almost 100% chance that I'm going to continue watching Emily in Paris, getting more and more annoyed at everything that happens. But yeah, it's very cookie cutter, it's very paint by numbers. You can see where everything's going. You know that the boyfriend is gonna break up with her because why would you
Mhm.
send you're not going to send somebody to Paris to not have sexy romances with sexy Parisian men. Like, that's not what else are we doing
Oh my god.
here?
The realtor, he's like, so you don't have a
So,
Paris boyfriend? And I was like, hilarious. He's like, so you don't have a Paris boyfriend? Okay, we can make that work. And she's like, no. And I was like,
and
yes,
he's like,
girl.
I will give you my number. And she's like, no, no, no,
No,
I'm
no.
fine.
You know, my favorite part of that is afterwards, she takes the picture of her with the view. Did you notice the picture she takes? Morgan, I know you
No,
noticed this. Her,
did
like,
I?
room with the view is down facing. And so you can actually see the photo she took of the room with the view. And it's literally the foliage below her window.
Oh, I
There's
did
none of the
notice that.
actual Paris view in her room with the view. I was like, congratulations, you have greenery,
Oh
girl.
my god. Yeah, no, it's so funny. Like
Yeah.
the influencer side of it is hilarious because she is this came out in what, like 2020?
I'm gonna
So
look it up.
like
Yeah, I'll
I
find it.
feel like video was starting to sort of take off as like the dominant form of
2020.
social
Yeah.
media at least at this point. And so the idea that the idea that like posting a picture of yourself eating a croissant in Paris was going to get you like 200 followers um is so funny to me personally. It's like, no, I don't think like every day millions of tourists take this exact same photo and there's really
Right.
nothing special about what she's doing. So I don't believe that this would have like made her account start taking
No.
off. Like you see the follower count start to increase and it's like, why?
I'll be
For
honest,
what
the most
reason?
unrealistic thing for me was that she only had 50 followers to begin with.
Yes. That's
A
true.
girl like her, who probably was very charismatic in high school and college, should have at least 4 to 500 people who follow
Oh
her,
yeah.
in my
Easy.
opinion.
Easy.
Like, easy.
I feel like even if like you only have like, you know, a small social circle or you know, like a tight social circle, you somehow still end up having like 100 to 200
Yeah.
followers just from like
Yeah.
your aunts and uncles that are like, love you, heart on your all
Mm-hmm.
of your posts, and you're like, you don't have to
Yep.
do
The
that.
local coffee shops that are hoping
Exactly.
that you'll post and tag them.
Any
Yeah.
place that you've gone that you tag that then follow you. I don't believe that this
Mm-hmm.
girl would have only had 50 followers. Like
Yeah.
this if you told me that this show was set in like 2015, I would 100% believe you. And it would be
Yeah.
more believable that she'd
Yeah,
be like
that's
taking
true.
off for posting a photo of her next to the Eiffel Tower like everyone does. If it was set in like, I don't know, 2013 or something when like
Yeah.
Instagram's just taking off and you're like, "Oh yeah, she got in on the ground floor so she didn't have to do anything interesting." But now people are doing like entire skits on like Reels and TikTok and like they still are getting like, 500 followers eating a
And you
baguette.
have to do it fast enough. You have to
Mhm.
post fast enough. You have to post at the right time of day. If you
You have
know
to post
you've got a
all the
big reel
time.
coming,
Yeah.
yes. If you know you have a big announcement or reel coming, you have to post that after you've had 3 or 4 days in a row of successful content. Like you can't
Yeah,
just post that one and expect
there's
it to go viral. It's a
actual
whole thing.
strategy. Yeah.
There
The
is a
idea that
strategy.
she is like part of her job is like social media strategy, but then with her own social media, she's like, I'm not going to do any strategy. That feels very real to like a social media person who's like, I hate this. I'm not going to put time and effort into it. But that stuff's not going to viral. I'm sorry. Like no one's going to be like, "You know what? I just followed this girl. She is having like what looks like the sickest cup of coffee in Paris." Like what why is anyone following her for this?
Okay, but we have two things I want to talk about. One is what you and I talked about before we started recording, which is how this is sort of a shut your brain off
Oh,
sort of a show.
absolutely.
So you were kind of describing that earlier. So give me the lowdown on that.
Oh, I feel like it's like the perfect show. It's the end of the night, you're tired, you cannot possibly think more thoughts. Guess what? You're not gonna have to while you're watching Emily in Paris. I was calling it like a power down show. Like you're just powering your brain completely off and you're just kind of watching like bright colors on a screen like a baby. Like I that's kind of how I was watching it. And I was like, this is fantastic. I haven't thought once during this show. I don't have to wonder what's gonna happen next. I know. It's pretty obvious.
And you don't have to worry that anyone is gonna die. You don't have to worry
No.
that a dragon's gonna come in and burn them all. Like,
No.
there's something nice about like I mean, you and I, even like My Lady Jane, which we watch,
Yeah.
you and I are like literally heads should be rolling.
Yes.
Who's going to die?
Yeah.
Um
There's some danger, there's some stakes involved.
mhm. There are zero stakes in this. What? So if she doesn't succeed in this job, she goes back to her wonderful place in Chicago with her boyfriend after having
Exactly.
an amazing time in France.
Oh,
Um
no.
Oh no.
Poor
It is kind of
Emily.
nice. It's like a scripted reality series.
It
It's kind of what
is.
it feels like
It's
to
kind
me.
of the way I feel when I watch, like, Love Is Blind. Like, do I
Yeah.
love the show? Yes. Do I think it's good? Am I thinking much while I'm watching it? Absolutely not.
It's kind of the show where I'm like, I could do this while folding laundry. I could do this
Yes, it's a
while
f
eating my Panda Express for lunch.
it is a fold laundry show if ever one was
Yep,
created. I think that it's like it seems just again, we've only watched 1/2 hour pilot,
correct.
but it's very from the pilot, I feel like I got the vibes, and the vibes are very, like, light and casual and carefree. And sure, I'm sure stuff is like bad stuff is going to happen to Emily, but she's going to persevere with her,
Be
pluck and
fine.
determination and her budding influencer career somehow. And she's just going to be fine. I just know she's going to be wearing something insane and she's going to like save the day somehow and Emily's
Oh
going to
yeah.
be okay.
I I do think that we're supposed to meet a character in the next few episodes. I know there's a blonde girl. There's some blonde girl who's
Oh.
like Emily's like buddy who
Mhm.
there's one point where they're like lounging on a mattress in the middle of a town square and she's like, I'm so glad that we're friends. And the girl goes, me too. And so
So
something
good.
here is going on. But I know we're gonna meet a different character. I know that the roommate or the neighbor downstairs definitely becomes a thing. um I think I am actually a little excited to see what comes of it. I also the other thing I want to talk about is like, is there something attractive to us about watching a show that is quote real life but so far from real life that we are a little envious? Like, her clothes.
Her
Can we
clothes.
talk about her
I
clothes?
know. It's
Oh,
very aspiration. You know what this show kind of
yes,
reminds
that's
me
the word
of
for it.
is is well, first off, it really reminds me of Sex and the City, which it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense because Darren Star is the executive producer here. He was an executive producer on Sex and the City. But it also reminds me of like some of the early 2000s shows like Gossip Girl, where it's like everybody's wearing really
Yes.
fancy clothes and everybody's kind of rich and fancy. Like she's not rich and fancy, but I will bet you that she ends up at like a chateau at some point in the
Oh,
run of this show.
absolutely.
I would take 100% bet on this that
She will
there's
meet
like
a
no
duke.
way. Yeah, she's gonna meet a duke. She's gonna meet some sort of French royalty.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to have a romance with somebody incredibly wealthy. That's almost
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it does feel like you're watching something that is there's no it's not historical fiction. No one turns into a horse. There are no dragons, and yet is probably not more realistic than those shows we just talked about.
Correct. Like the show about the change of like My Lady Jane, which we're so sad was canceled.
I cannot believe
We
it
have
was
no
canceled.
words.
How dare you? How dare
We
you,
are so
Amazon?
angry.
Bring
And
it
I'm
back. Bring
actually
it back.
serious.
I'm actually angry. Yeah,
Like
no.
I have signed the petition for to save Lady Jane.
They gotta save. The thing is that like how expensive can that show really be to make? I saw the special effects involved in turning them into a horse. It can't be that expensive.
Well, my thing is when they're like, it didn't find its target audience. I was like, you've had it out for a month and a half, and you have not given TikTok enough time. The book
No,
girlies are just discovering it. Give us a minute.
I know, serious, and during when they released it, it was, like, during the Olympics, like, a lot of at
I
that point,
know.
honestly, I was watching Olympics coverage, like, almost the entire time. So the
Yes.
only reason, like, I saw something on social media, not anything that they were promoting, just somebody being like, "Are you kidding about the horse thing?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" But, like, yeah, you have to give people more time to find a show than, like, less than a month almost.
But like, what is the draw that keeps people coming back to Emily in Paris?
I mean, first off, I think people just legitimately love Paris or have like romanticized Paris to such an extent that they're like, everything's better in Paris. So I feel like people would just watch it like a travelogue, regardless of how good or bad it was. But
That's
I
fair.
I also think it's like, it's fun. It's kind of like, yeah, it's like sit back and just kind of chill out and watch her do something stupid in Paris. Like, yeah, I think I could watch a whole season of that for sure.
And apparently, I mean, it is filmed in Paris, which is saying something that a show manages to go and actually film on location in
Yeah.
Paris.
It looks
Um,
great, and I think that
it
makes a
does
lot of
look.
sense that yeah.
It is very good look. The show itself is very good looking. The characters are good looking, the costumes are good looking, the set is good looking. And yeah, there is something attractive. And you and I have talked about this before, like how nice it is sometimes to just find a show that doesn't take itself too seriously. Like
Yes.
this show knows that this is stereotypical. They know that they're running a script that kind of feels and kind of sounds like AI wrote it. Like they know that it is over the top and that her social media strategies wouldn't really cut it in real life. But
No, they wouldn't.
they they still know it's gonna sell.
Yeah.
Um and so they just don't take themselves too seriously and they have a good time, and I think that there is something to be said about the fact that like I could look at this and break down every reason that maybe this is just not that thrilling of a pilot, and yet I am going to watch
And
the
yet
next episode
it worked.
probably after we finish recording.
Yeah, it worked in the way that a pilot was traditionally supposed to work because I feel like
Yeah.
we've watched a lot of pilots from the streaming era for
Mhm.
for Pilot Pod, and we come out of it being like, well, the premise is interesting, but the pilot was slow, and it feels like maybe in the next couple episodes we'll get to it. And this pilot was like, her name's Emily. Now she's in Paris. I'm like, that's
Mhm.
exactly what I wanted out of this show. Like it
Yep.
did the exact thing I wanted it to, which is after the first episode, I did want to keep watching it, which I think is
Mhm.
what a good pilot is supposed to do first and foremost.
I also was attracted to the idea of an episode that was less than 42 minutes, less than an
Oh
hour. Like I know it's
my God.
Netflix,
So nice.
but I'll be honest, like it's longer shows are exhausting. One of my all-time favorite shows that I think it got canceled after the second season. It never really took off. I never really talk about it with anyone. Was Sweet Bitter on HBO, I think. Oh, you would love
Ooh,
Sweet Bitter. It's
what's
about a like
that?
small town girl
Oh,
who
is this the one
moves to
about
New
the
York.
girl who works in the restaurant industry?
Fancy restaurant. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
I would love that.
it gives you an insight into like what it would be like to work at a like Michelin star restaurant. But it's like this, basically she moves to New York. She's like, I am stuck with my life. I know that I don't have any skills you're looking for, but I want to live life. And to do that, I'm going to work in this really high-end bar restaurant selling wine that is literally more than my rent per bottle.
Oh my
And then at
God.
the end of the night, like trying that, because anything that's left over, they let the staff try. So it's really interesting, but
Ooh.
it like they talk about food, they talk about the wine. It's a really good show, but each episode is one of those, they're all under half an hour. And it's
Oh,
really
wow. I didn't
attractive.
know that that
They're
was
easy to
half an hour.
watch. Yeah. And I remember that attracted me to it because overall I do think that in this world of overconsumption, so to speak, of 800-page books, which you and I absolutely
We love
love,
those.
there is something really nice about a 250-page airport novel that is going to
Yeah.
get us through the plane ride. We're going to have a great time. We're going to maybe think about it for a little bit. And someone's going to be like, hey, did you read that book? And be like, yeah, I have read that book. It's a good one.
I
Try it.
did.
It's
I
not
love
great, but
that
it's a
one.
great, it's a good book.
It's a good
Um,
way to pass the time. My
but yeah.
husband and I, it's so funny that you mentioned the half hour as being part of the appeal because my husband and I complain all the time. We'll like hear about this great show and then we'll go onto the page to start it and we'll see like the first episode's like an hour and 10 minutes. And I just feel like I can feel it in my soul. I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want them to be that long. Like whatever,
Mm-hmm.
what happened? My complaints about what has happened to the 45-minute episode are so annoying because I complain about this
Yep.
all the time. But it's one of the reasons why we're so much more willing to pick up a half an hour show
Mm-hmm.
because like it's also easier to like fit them in like well, let's watch one right before bed or like let's watch one while we're eating lunch or something like that.
My lunch break. I could
Yeah,
watch
the
this
lunch
whole
break.
episode in my lunch break, and that was really nice.
Yeah, it's so much easier to watch some of these like half an hour shows versus
Mm-hmm.
even like The Bear, which is like a very intense show. We got through that so much faster than we've gotten through like half of the
Are they
hour
half
long
hours?
shows. They are, yeah.
Interesting. I wonder when the shift in that happened. I wonder if that's I genuinely don't know. Like in the industry, is that cheaper? Is it faster? Um it seems to me like it couldn't necessarily be that much faster, but I wonder if
Yeah,
the turnaround is faster from the writing side, like the writer's room. Oh, I've turned out X many pages versus 2x many
that's
pages.
true.
A lot
Yeah.
faster. I wonder if like from the pre and post production side, it's faster. I actually don't know. I would love
It would be
I will ask
interesting.
some people, Morgan. I'm
Because
very
I think
curious now.
the traditional thinking is that an hour-long show is a drama of some kind,
Mhm.
and a half an hour show is a comedy. And I think one of the big controversies is that The Bear keeps getting nominated as best comedy because it's a half an hour. That show is not really
Interesting.
that funny.
No.
It is very intense
Drama.
and very dramatic. And the comedy is not. I wouldn't sell it to somebody as a comedy, but because it's a half an hour show, they're like, "Oh, it's a
Interesting.
comedy." So I wonder if maybe the way that Emily in Paris was kind of pitched is like, "Oh, it'll be, kind of a frothy, light, comedic style show." And that, of course, would mean that it's like a half an hour show versus an hour show. I could
Well,
see that because I do think, to your point, I think it's not taking itself too seriously.
no.
I think it's kind of in on the joke. It's like, yeah, no, she's maybe a little stupid. Like I think that it's I don't know, I wouldn't say it's like a straight comedy, but I would say that it does kind of lean more like lighthearted than,
Yeah.
some of the other hour-long shows I watch that are like, "Okay, wow, yeah, we're getting heavy now."
Yeah. Well, I'm doing my classic every 6 months or so. It feels like, and it actually might be every 6 months or so. I rewatch Downton Abbey,
Oh, Downton
like
Abbey.
most of the way through. But I usually start with season two because season one, everything in season one, all the character growth just completely changes in season 2, so season 1 feels irrelevant.
That's really
Um
true.
like most of the war changes and turns the characters into the characters that you follow for the rest of the show. Season 1 is very almost superfluous in a way when you look back at it. Anywho,
Yeah.
they're long episodes. They're like
They
hour
are
long
long
episodes.
episodes, yeah.
Especially the Christmas special and
Oh,
like
the
the
Christmas
Journey to the Highlands
specials.
special and
Oh
the
my gosh.
London special. Oh my god, I love all
Oh
those.
my god, they're also good.
Yeah,
What was the other thing with Downton Abbey, not to get off track, but I feel like this is sort of part of it, is
tell
that
me
the
do. Yeah.
first season is a little bit but it's a lot of it is about, like, aristocracy land rights,
Yes.
which, I have tried to get Mike into this show several times, and I think I really lose him at the, like, the inheritance laws, so maybe
Oh,
I should
start with
sort of
season 2.
maybe I should start
No,
with
you
season
don't
2.
need any of season 1. Like
No.
realistically, all
Yeah,
you
you
have
really
to
don't.
do is tell him who the characters are. Be like, look, you got mom, dad, grandmama. You've got like the
You
three.
got Maggie Smith.
This is the Brooklyn version of Downton Abbey. You got the
Listen.
grandmama. You got the two rich people, the mom and the dad. They got 3 daughters. One of the daughters, she wants to go off and be like someone else. She wants to explore herself. One's a real bitch, and the other one, she's just kind of in the middle. She's a nobody. We forget about her, and there's a war going on. Like that's Downton Abbey from the
And
Brooklyn
that's Downton
perspective.
Abbey. If you ever needed just,
And
like, a
there's a
quick
dog.
recap. "Hey, I'm
And
walking
then there's
here."
downstairs. And the downstairs people, there's like the butler, and there's the maid, and then there's the maid is really into the valet, and that's a big deal, I gotta
Ooh.
tell you.
Drama.
I kind of love this idea now of finding like a Brooklyn person and putting like period
Ju
dramas in front of them
just
and
having
having
them recap
that's a whole
period
that's a
dramas.
TikTok series right there.
I
I
would
think that'd
watch
be
that
so
for
fun.
sure, for sure. I would watch, like, a
Oh
somebody with
my
a heavy
gosh.
Brooklyn accent,
Oh,
recap Downton Abbey.
like and or like recapping Pride and Prejudice. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like Jane Austen from the Bronx.
Yes, that'd be so good.
Oh, that'd be funny. That actually, last night I went and I saw at the Old Globe. It just closed
Mhm.
tonight. I was really lucky. I didn't realize I was getting the last possible ticket.
Oh.
Um, we saw Miss Home and Miss Watson, which
Mhm.
is written by one of my favorite playwrights, Kate Hamill. And she takes a lot of things like Sense and Sensibility. She's actually the one who wrote the play Sense and Sensibility that you saw me in.
Oh,
It's the same
nice.
playwright. She takes like Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice and like the story of Sherlock Holmes and flips it on its tail or flips it on its head. Is that the phrase?
I think
Basically, Miss Home
I
and
think
Miss Watson is the play starts out, you think you're gonna go meet Sherlock Holmes and John Watson, two
mm.
male individuals in a period drama, and then literally the stage manager comes out and is like, oh no, we're not doing that, it didn't work out, like the costumes weren't working, it was the corsets were not available, it's a whole thing. And so they're like, oh, we're not doing that, okay. And so it ends up being a modern day telling of Joan Watson, who is a post-COVID like girl who's just struggling to find herself, literally finds the cheapest possible rent in London, is living as a roommate with Shirley Holmes, and it's a
Uh, uh,
whole story like
that's
that.
so
It flips
funny.
it on its head. It's got all these little jokes in there, but it's hilarious. And the reason that the whole idea is that Shirley Holmes, who she calls herself Sherlock, she hates that people call her Shirley, um, is trying to solve the mystery of what happened to Watson. Why is Watson the way Watson is right now? But it was an amazing production, but it was kind of fun to like flip things on the head a little bit and to have like a completely different story from a different story. And so I don't know how we got on this conversation, but it was really good, and it kind of reminded me of our Bronx skit, which is we were just
Yeah.
doing with Downton Abbey, in which we were talking about hour long
Sure.
versus half an hour.
We got that. We got there. We got there some way. But you know what?
Ooh, the
I think
roadmap.
it does work because I do think that there is something that we all like in, like, seeing a twist on something familiar,
Yeah.
which I do feel like kind of Emily in Paris is. This is like it's Sex in the City if you put it in Paris. If
Hmm.
Carrie, instead of writing columns about her love life, was doing social media strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not
I
too complicated.
no,
It's just fun. Like I'm gonna watch episode 2. I don't know
yeah,
if I'm gonna watch all the way through, but one of my friends, my coworker, Bianca and I literally, if she likes it, I'm gonna like it. If I like it, she's gonna like
yeah.
it. So she's all the way into season 4, and so she was like, "No, you need to watch this." And I was like, "Well, I probably will. I probably
I also
will."
think it's just like, yeah, it's like fun to like visually it's fun to watch because
Yeah, it's
she's
gorgeous.
always wearing something insane or
Mhm.
beautiful or both sometimes. You know, I was
Mhm.
like, what are
Yep.
those shoes that she's wearing? Like
What are the
she's gonna
color
kill herself
scheme?
in those.
There was one point where she was pacing around the courtyard in like 4.5-inch stilettos, and I was like,
Yeah,
girl, that's the most unrealistic part of this whole thing, is that you got
I
to work
know.
early in those stilettos after walking to
All the
work.
cobblestones over
Oh
there.
my
Oh my
gosh.
god. I was wearing like sneakers in Italy and I almost wiped out multiple times. I can't
Really?
imagine. Yeah, because there's just like a lot. It's like a lot of like old cobblestone streets and stuff
Oh,
like that. And
that
you just
sounds.
have to watch out for the cobbles, you know? Like I can't imagine trying to I'm bad enough at heels as it is. If I was also trying to do heels on cobblestones, that's how I'd die for sure.
Is that why shoe guys are called cobblers?
Ooh, I don't know. That's a great question. That is a great question. Maybe.
Google that.
Maybe it
That is what they're
is.
called, though.
Yeah, I think so. I
Why are
haven't gone
cobblers
to a
called cobblers?
ooh.
The origin of the word came from. Oh, okay. It's not. The
Oh,
origin of the
bummer.
word is thought to come from the 14th century surname and place Colbelere,
Oh
which
ho
means one
ho.
who mends shoes.
Okay.
The origin of the name for the baked dessert. Oh no, I don't need the
Oh.
dessert. Oh, this is AI. Gemini on Google is trying to bring me a bunch of different things. Oh yeah, no, it's a 14th century word that means one who makes shoes. So it is not
Oh,
in fact the
interesting.
cobblestones.
Huh. That's
It could have been
fascinating.
though,
Well,
for all
it
we
could
knew.
have been. It should have been
Today you
because those
learned. It should
cobblestones
have
are
been.
dangerous.
All right, so I think that's gonna wrap it up. We have enjoyed chatting about Emily in Paris. We are both definitely gonna watch more.
We are, yeah.
Friendly reminder: you guys can find us on Patreon, and who knows, we're still very behind on doing our Bridgerton episode, but it's gonna happen this week. We may talk more Emily in Paris.
We might
Who
if we
knows?
both
But you
continue
guys can find
on.
us on Patreon, patreon.com. Yes, slash the legendary ladies. If you support at certain levels, you could join us live on these podcasts. We sincerely appreciate our patrons. We don't talk about it enough, but your funds give us everything we need to run our podcast, giving us our subscription fees, getting us to, on our StreamYard, help with our equipment purchases. I one of the things when I'm a patron of certain Patreons, I like knowing where the money's going. And so please know that you are supporting us in what we need to make this podcast happen, which we love to do
Hosting
without
fees.
ads. Yes, hosting fees. We don't like doing ads. We did ads for a hot second there, and it was not fun. It was
Yeah.
not great.
No, we don't wanna have
Um,
to do all this back and forth, so, yeah, we really
yeah.
appreciate our Patreons, and we also just like chatting with them, and
Yes.
talking with them on our, chat and on, when they come join us live for an episode, so definitely, go check us out over there. There's a couple of different levels where you get different kind of benefits,
Perks.
but yeah, it's, patreon.com/the legendary ladies.
Maybe we'll do a whole photo series of Morgan and I pretending we're Emily in Paris.
Oh
Then
my
we'll like
god.
try to
Oh,
advertise like you guys.
oh my
Orange
god.
chicken.
Orange chicken's
What you can't
so
see,
good.
if you were watching on
Oh my
YouTube, you
god,
see me holding up my Panda
Legos.
Express, which I got for dinner.
Oh my god, the orange chicken is the best. Actually, it is the best though. That's the one I always get.
String bean chicken. I get orange chicken and
String
string
bean
bean chicken.
chicken. Oh, I
Oh, if
haven't
you've never
tried
had
that
the
one.
string bean chicken,
I don't think I
it's
have.
really good. Oh, you
Ooh, I'll have
have?
to get that then. I said I don't think
No,
I
it's good.
have. Oh,
It's
nice.
good. It's very good.
I
And
had
it's
I had Panda Express for the
marginally
first
healthier.
time. Uh, speaking of Patreon, I had Panda Express for the first time when I was doing research for my mukbang episode.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me.
Because I lost I lost our trivia contest and Kat won. And my job was to present something on mukbangs. And then I watched a bunch of online mukbangs, and they were like going to Panda Express, and it made me hungry. And I was like, I don't think I've ever had Panda Express. And now it's like a staple of our like fast casual eating.
Yep. It's one of the only like quote fast food places that I'll go to, you know, not
Spacesuit.
regularly, but
It's
if I'm like tonight I have 10 minutes on my drive home
yeah.
between getting home from work and recording this podcast. I haven't even eaten it. It's just sitting here staring at me, but at least I don't have to cook anything tonight. So,
Exactly.
let's go ahead and kind of sign off so I can express.
Of course, of
We're
course.
just being all
Well,
real here.
before you get to your dinner, is where can people find you, and do you have anything you want to plug?
I am on Instagram, Amy_hip. That's Amy_HYP. I'm not in any productions right now, but I am like firmly in my theater girl era. So if you are in San Diego, Orange County, and Los Angeles, and you have a theater production, if your theater company is doing workshops, if your theater company is hosting movement classes, please reach out to me. I am all about that theater world right now. I want to learn more. I want to do more. I'm taking a break from my own theater stuff. I just finished a stretch of really intense work. I did 4 productions in 13 months, 4
Oof,
full productions.
that's a
It was
lot.
a lot. 2 of them were original musicals. 3 of them I was the second build lead. Like I was sleepy, and
I
also
bet.
now poor, because the gas money was a lot. But I loved absolutely every second of it. So I am now working my second job more, so I'm not any less tired. I am just slightly more financially out. But it means that while I'm taking a break, probably through the beginning of the year, I am looking to do classes. I'm looking to go see more shows. So if you're in shows, if you know shows, things that I should be seeing, please tell me. Please reach out. Amy_HYP. Let me know about it. And if you have tickets that are like starving artists cost
Starving artist
friendly,
tickets.
you let me know. Pay what you can nights are my absolute favorite thing. The more, and it's something Morgan and I were actually talking about before the podcast. If you are in theater or you're part of a theater company, I gotta tell you, pay what you can nights. You genuinely will see a different audience come to those shows, because it is the people who are under the age of 30 who cannot afford a $60 ticket, who cannot afford a $30 ticket. If you're going with 3 of your best friends, now you're looking at $100. So
Mhm.
pay what you can nights, pretty gosh darn cool. Great way to make theater more accessible for a growing community in a world where theater is becoming less accessible for most people.
Yeah,
Anywho,
it's
that's
a
what's
great way
going
to
on in my
build up an
life.
audience too, if you think about it, because those
Really
people
is.
who got into the habit of going to the theater, once they have more money, will have more money for the theater, but if they never got in the habit of going,
Mm-hmm.
they're never going to start. So, it's
Yes.
a great way to start a love of the theater in people who are maybe younger and don't have the funds to go to these very expensive shows. We were,
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe before the podcast, I was talking about how my husband and I were kicking ourselves that we didn't go see the Daniel Radcliffe like Merrily We Roll Along when it was on Broadway, because we're not that far from Broadway, and
Mm-hmm.
by the time we thought to look at tickets, they were like $800 for one seat, and I was like, well. Merrily, it will
Nope.
roll along without me. So, oh well. uh,
I love that pun so much. That's
thank
great.
you, thank you.
So,
Uh,
Morgan,
uh,
where can everybody find you online, and what are you up to?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. And you can also find me as a co host on Supergirl Radio, where my co host right now is at Dragon Con, enjoying all the
So
sights and
jealous.
sounds of Dragon Con. One of these
Yes,
years, I
please.
am going to
I
make it
know.
to
I really
Dragon
want to
Con.
go.
It's on my list. But she is moderating, I think, a couple of panels. She's doing one
That's
on
awesome.
like the Battle of Lex Luthors, where they're going to talk about all the different
Yes.
versions of Lex. That should be really fun. I think some of them were gonna pop up
The
on
the
our feed.
lexicon of
Oh,
Lexes.
Lexicon is a good Lex Luthor convention name.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yes. I was just thinking like it's the book of Lexes,
Yes.
but I love Lexicon. That's great.
Lexicon. I'm going to
And you know he
Lexicon.
would totally host one just
He
about him. Would be
would be
called the
so
Lexicon.
psyched to have a lexicon. So good. Just today, she posted a picture with Jason Bear from Roswell doing the little pointing
What?
upward thing. Because
Yes.
I am like softly obsessed with Jason Bear from Roswell. I just think he looks so great, and he always has. It's a childhood crush that's like deep within me. But yeah, we watched an episode of Roswell, the first episode. We did our own pilot pod of Roswell for our Patreon, and I was telling her how much me and my friend Sarah used to joke about the pointing thing. And then she got to meet him at Dragon Con and get that picture. So we'll have some fun Dragon Con stories in like the next couple of weeks. So you should check us out on Supergirl Radio.
All right, so that's going to wrap us up. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, you can find us legends_podcast on Twitter, the Legendary Ladies on Instagram, on iTunes. Leave us a 5-star review. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate you for joining us, and stay legendary.